Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Impact, an interview with Rod Page. I'm Martin Kalfatovic. I'm the BHL Program Director, and we're located here in the Keeper's office at the Royal Botanic Gardens Q, right outside of London, and it's going to be a wonderful interview today. This is part of our 10th anniversary celebrations for the Biodiversity Heritage Library, and we're highlighting BHL's impact on science. Today we've got Rod Page with us. Rod, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Rod Page. I'm, I guess, a lapsed taxonomist. I started out working on crustaceans as an undergraduate. Got into systematics, became kind of part of the whole sort of discussion about statistics, which was all the rage when I was doing my degree. I've become interested in computer programming, which is like a huge part of my life. It's been a lot of fun. I've edited journals, and I guess lately I've just sort of been spending a lot of time on social media, tweeting that most things we're doing could be done slightly better.
Mm-hmm. Well, welcome to our online audience, and we'd just like to let you know that if you do have any questions, please go ahead and just drop them into the Google Hangouts box there, and we'll be answering those at the end of the session. So our first question for you is, when did you first discover BHL, and give your honest first impression of what you saw?
I don't think you want that. No, it was one of those things that I first saw it, and it was pretty rough edges. I saw lots of potential, but as I said earlier today, I mean, my first impression was it was full of plants, which I guess reflects the fact that it came out of Royal Botanic Gardens and technology. It's this lots of really cool old stuff, and I guess I was really interested in sort of literature from the late 20th century. And of course, it didn't have articles, which everybody knew at the time. I remember having conversations with Chris Reading about this. And as an academic, your unit of work is an article. So I wanted to be able to have an article and go and find it in BHL. And that seemed a bit kind of difficult. So I looked at it looked kind of cool, maybe not yet.
Okay. I know we've gone a little bit further from those first impressions. We'll get to those in a bit. But one of the things we most know you for is your work on BioStor. Can you tell us a little bit about BioStor, how it came about, and how it actually provides BHL with enhanced article access?
Sure. So I guess the thing that sort of converted me to BHL in a way was I did discover there was stuff that wasn't plants and wasn't home. I think there were things like the Bulletin of the British Museum of History and the Bulletin of Zoological Nomenclature, which is sort of hardcore porn for taxonomy. I mean, it's the really, really good stuff. And it was from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. There are even volumes that I recognize that I haven't read in my research. So then I thought, there's some really good stuff in here. And then the challenge was, how do you get it? How do you go from, I know there's an article, I know it's in BHL, how do I get it together? And this sort of came out of another project I've been working on. I have this quixotic task. I want to take every animal name, everything published, and look at the original description. So I got some information on that, and this had a big list of all these articles. So I figured out, if I know where an article is, like the title, the journal, the page numbers, I can go and find that in BHL. And then it occurred to me that I could write a program to do that. So I could do this automatically. So that was sort of the beginning of BioStor. So it was kind of driven by, once I realized it was more than just old plants, and it had sort of content that drew related to what I wanted to do. And it was hackable. It's great that it's an open project, so you can literally go and download all the data. So if you want to do something with BHL that BHL didn't do, I wasn't sure that you could get it. And that was sort of the beginnings of BioStor.
Right. Well, can you tell us maybe what some of the things are that BHL does do well and how they have had an impact on global science?
So there's several things. I mean, firstly, having all that amazing content. And I guess what has really excited me has been the content that's sort of in that great gap of the mid to late 20th century. So the content I've interacted with mostly has been often provided by human institutions. So it's Smithsonian Institute content, British Museum, all that sort of content. The stroke of genius, I guess, that you did was index it by taxonomic name, which I guess goes back to work that Grimson was doing and now recently Global Names. That has transformed the ability to find something. So quite often, I end up finding articles not by the bibliographic data, because that's so messy, but if I know it's about the species or its genus, I can find it. So that has been hugely convincing. And I guess, in some ways, I mean, it's the way I kind of think about BHL is partly it's just this kind of I want to find the names in literature. But I guess the reason for that is that's where these things are described. And for the vast majority of species, it's probably all we know about them is in that literature. And so if you want to know how big is a beetle, what does it eat, arguably that's the place to go. So it's really useful for that. There's enormous unexplored potential. And what could we do?
I like the comment about being maybe the only place something might be described. Because one of the things we tell our scanning operators around the world is if you miss a page, you might be extinct in the species from the human knowledge base.
Yeah,
so it's very important to be accurate in that scanning on our side.
I mean, I think for a thing like this, there's kind of a power law. I mean, you can do the same thing with Wikipedia. If you look at the distribution of page size, even for a well-known group like mammals, the vast majority of mammals have a start at Wikipedia. Nobody cares about them every month. So if you want to flesh that stuff out, it's the taxonomic literature that's going to be something.
So what we really want to know is what we can do to improve BHL. We've been around for 10 years now. What should we start focusing on as we move into year 11 and forward?
It's a good question. I guess first and foremost, it's always going to be content. You can never have enough content. So I think the first priority is just getting more stuff done. Part of that is going to be having those conversations with people who have that kind of content. I guess the more content you have, that raises the challenge of finding stuff, discoverability. I guess that was the motivation for BioStor. It's great having that stuff there, you've got to be able to find it. I think the next big sort of potential is going to be sort of mining that information, text mining. And so you made this out with taxonomic names. I guess the next thing would be, can we search the whole content? Can we search by geographic place? So when you've seen the kind of maps that BioStor generates and the kind of general map project, it would be great if you could sort of draw a box on the map and say, tell me everything you know about that region. So here are the reports. I mean, there are some amazing expedition reports that you could discover by saying, here's a box, this is the northeast coast of Brazil. Northeast coast. This is what we know.
We've seen a lot of changes in bioinformatics in the last 10 years, increase of computing capabilities, a lot more projects in genomics and other things. And what do you see as the future of bioinformatics from your point of view, looking again forward? Where might BHL fit into that vision?
I guess there are several things. So my own hobby horse in this area, the thing I really want to see, is the thing that everybody talks about but nobody's yet done, which is the kind of the cross-country. So at the moment we have these amazing resources where we have these museums with collections that are being digitized. We have literature being digitized. The other aspect of digitalization is sequencing. Sequencing is just digitizing stuff. And we all want to make those cross-links between the literature, specimens, the sequences, the ecology, this sort of thing. That's a huge challenge, and we all talk about it, and we haven't figured out how to do it at scale, and that seems to me to be the big kind of challenge. And I think we're kind of at the stage where, I guess the problem for doing that is, if you have a content, you have something that you have some sense of ownership about, you want to sort of do something. Nobody yet has sort of owned that space of the link. It's nobody's sort of primary function to make those links. I think that's a sort of one unexplored niche that we haven't sort of
It does seem that a lot of projects and institutions have really gone back into siloed in terms of linking. So you might be linking only within your collection system or only within one small project. So how can we sort of, is like globalization of linking, or is there a mega project that, or should it be many hands kind of thing?
So I guess you've got to find the drivers, I guess. And so I guess the linking things that have worked on the bigger level, things like Google and Facebook, or what's closer to home, so Crossref, which is linking between publishers, and publishers don't like each other, so they manage to have that system. Is what's the driver behind it? I suspect one way to get into it is essentially by following money. So if we look at what's happening with, we now have identifiers for articles that are being linked to other articles. We have identifiers for articles that otherwise are being linked to identifiers for people. So people can track what they've done. And now we have identifiers for funders. So the idea is that funders can track the articles and what people are doing. So if we could do that and say to funders, well, by the way, your research on these papers has actually funded this data which has appeared, say, in GBIF, or these articles have appeared in BHL, then I think they're going to be interested in that. And I think money will speak. So things like funding and impact might be the way to drive sort of idea of linking in the back of that. And we could do the cool biology, but we've got that network for other sort of reasons.
And let me just check in with our online audience. Do we have any questions from out there, Grace?
We had one question, wondering if BHL works with the Convention on Biological Diversity.
We have had discussions with the CDD. Interestingly enough, the current head of the convention is Raul Diaz, who is from Brazil, and he was at our organizational meeting for our BHL Cielo global partner, which is located in Brazil. And Raul was very supportive of BHL in his capacity within Brazil. I think up at the Convention of Biological Diversity, which is based in Montreal, I believe, he has a lot of work to do there. So he hasn't really had too much time to focus in on BHL activity specifically. We do work very closely with GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which is another pan-national organization. So that's one of our areas that we work with there. So we do run into him and the CDD folk in that context. So Rod did have the opportunity today to go to our global partners meeting today and got to meet a lot of the different BHL staff from all around the world that we had here today. We had almost 40 people, I think. Any impressions on the BHL community now that you've met us all live and in person?
Yeah, it was a great meeting. It was a lot of fun. It's quite different from most meetings I go to. But people, in many ways, much more kind of diverse. They come from a different background to me, which I find interesting. I'm not from the library community. There are some things that libraries do that strike me as kind of odd, but that's just because I'm not. There's a tremendously kind of good spirit. There's lots of kind of interesting things going on. So for me, it was refreshing and interesting. And it was personally, I think it needs to be stood up a little bit. I think there are some things that BHL could be doing quite aggressively that I would sort of like to see them happen. But I'm wondering about other things. It just occurs to me that there's so much untapped potential in BHL, like lots of these kind of projects. So one thing I've been pushing wearing my sort of GBIF hat is this idea of the challenge, where you have a small pot of money and you encourage people to do something. So we did one last year, and it was very kind of vague, and it's a small pot of money. And I guess the idea is it's not so much the money, it's the sort of taking part. And I'm wondering if there's some of the things that BHL is thinking about that are quite challenging at the moment, or perhaps might be on the horizon that we still have to explore, would be a great kind of thing. We had some discussion today about how you find bits of documents that are relevant to taxonomy or ecology or something like that. One use that I played with a while ago is this idea of, if you find two taxonomic names together in the same bit of text, what does that tell you? Well, potentially it's hosts and parasites. So you could do things like if you had a taxonomic tree for names on a page, and you discover, say, that there are mammals in crustacea, or maybe they're ectoparasites of whales. So maybe you can start building these host parasite databases by textbook. So there's so many ideas that you can do. And this one way to sort of do that is if your resources are stretched by this sheer tonnage of stuff you can scan and sort of put in BHL. Something like that is a way to sort of foster innovation. We had some extraordinary, some quite off the wall things in support for so I wonder if something like that might be kind of useful.
Well, that's a great idea. That's definitely something worthwhile looking into. Maybe something to start our 11th year of celebration.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank all of you.
Another question, actually. Yeah. Does BHL have plans to aggregate born digital in copyright content? It seems that BHL is still scanning documents published in the year 2010, for example.
So we do have, what we do is we work very actively with the intellectual property holders to gain permission for those. Some of those copyright holders will give us permission to digitize things up to yesterday. Sometimes they also give us what's called a moving wall. So they'll say you can digitize the last 5 years of our material. So when that 5 years ends, we roll over to the 6th year, we can start a new cycle there. So we do try to get as much contemporary material as possible, but again, respecting the intellectual property owners' rights as much as possible. We have a technical challenge with ingesting into BHL the born digital content. So it's a bit of a challenge in terms of fitting in things that might be HTML files, XML files, might be stored in a database and spat out on the page in various ways. So we don't really have a good handle on how to deal with all this heterogeneous born digital content at this point. It's something we think about and people do ask us for, so it's on our radar screen, but it's just not ready for us. We're not ready for it yet.
And Rod, perhaps you could expand a little bit more on some of the things that you said that you think BHL could be doing a little bit more aggressively. You talked about some of them, but some of the things maybe that you ended up reading today.
So, I guess one of the things is getting content. Right? We talked a bit about this. So one approach to content is you ask permission, you do negotiations together. Another approach is you just scan it anyway. I guess there are two ways forward. So one is the kind of, I guess what they have in the States, the DMCA. So you can put it up and somebody can plan to take a step down and say you're taking it down. Or this idea that perhaps you scan it, extract the facts, expose the facts, and keep the text hidden until such time as those negotiated. And there are projects in biodiversity like cancer organizations doing it, content brands and other organizations. So I wonder whether that's something that could be thought of. So I guess it depends what we think is important. I know part of the huge appeal of BHL is actually seeing the original language. But if that's problematic, if we knew what it said, and it's very simple, we might be able to do something like that.
Some things that I've toyed with, I know the Internet Archive has the lending a book option, where actually you can digitize in copyright materials, and they have basically felt that this is a legal library-like thing to do, and they will only let one person at a time see that online. And so you can actually borrow the book online, view the content, and then when you check it back in, someone else can check that. I wondered if that might be something we want to explore in BHL world, where actually we could do the name finding within the book. If there's a particular book you really want to find to see, it's very unlikely hundreds of people around the world want to look at that book at one time. So you could borrow that book electronically, do your research on those couple pages you're interested in, check it back in. So that's something I'm interested in exploring. I just think if that's some kind of option that could help definitely expose some of that literature in a more open manner.
Yeah,
that's one possibility too.
Obviously there's a huge kind of legal minefield here, but here in the UK, there's this ruling that if you can legally read it, you can mine it, which is opening up a lot of kind of paper literature for possibly kids money. So I think there's scope for being more aggressive in getting that content, doing things with it, even if it's not kind of traditional. Here it is, click it.
And again, with the caveat, I'm not a lawyer, but there's also the recent ruling on the Google Books project in the US that basically said the same thing. You could scan it, hold it. So that also opens up some possibilities there for the kind of project you described.
Yeah, and I think it seems to be a bit more aggressive. I mean, one of the things, this is slightly hyperbolic, but we're supposedly in the middle of a biodiversity crisis. And yet the people who hold the biodiversity information aren't thinking like that's really the case. Because if it was, you think we'd be doing our damnedest to mobilize as much information as we can. Elections, sequences, and elections. We're doing a bit of that. But if we are in this crisis, we need to know as much as we can. We're going about it really, really slowly. So more openness is better.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
So, Rod, you have a lot of ideas of things you'd like to see BHL do, but if you could only pick one, and let's say we have unlimited funding to do it, what would it be?
What a horrible question. Only one thing. It's going to come more to what I can think of. Okay, one thing to do, I think, is prioritize content for scanning. And there are ways to come up with lists. I would be able to give you a list based on things that I know are taxonomically equivalent. For example, there's a huge European literature for the continent of Africa that's mainly in French. So, for example, I think if there was a sort of priority list, and other people could come up with their priorities in this list, and we could then say, right, this is the journal that's going to have the big thing. Let's go for that. Another idea can get to the declaration, whose name I can't pronounce, Bucco. That's a wonderful kind of opportunity to have a league table idea. So these organizations have signed up saying, we want to be open and share this content. well, let's judge that by how much they have interacted with BHL. So that's reason 2 goes.
Just going quickly to your list idea, we actually have done that a bit. We started off with one reason why we had so many plants in the beginning is we were actually prioritizing against the Royal Botanic Gardens tropicals.
Right.
So we get a whole lot of plants in. We've also used index on Mollium to prioritize some of our zoology literature. And we found some lists by Rob Page about things. And so we took that initial list of his and we worked through those to get permissions for a lot of those. So lists are a really great idea. And we welcome any more lists you can provide us, but it really does help us focus the scanning things now that we have more limited funds for scanning. It's best to use them as best as possible. So if there's things people really need, we can do those first. Any more questions, Grace? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us online. We're here at Royal Botanic Gardens Q for a little bit longer today for our meetings and things. Thank you, Rod, for joining us for the past 2 days for our BHL at 10 anniversary. And again, for those of you online, feel free to follow the hashtag BHL at 10 online for the rest of our meetings here and throughout the rest of the year as we add more exciting content for our 10th anniversary. So thank you.